After leaving corporate, I made a decision that I thought was smart, practical, logical even, and it cost me 3 months of my mental health, my physical energy, and my confidence. 3 months of anxiety, 3 months of exhaustion, 3 months of that little voice in my head telling me I'd made a terrible mistake leaving corporate in the first place. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. The full story, no filters, no polished version, just the honest truth. Because if you're rebuilding after corporate and you're feeling financial pressure right now, you need to hear this before you make the same mistake I did. Let me give you some context first. When I left corporate after 15 plus years, I had a plan: build my YouTube channel, document my journey, build a business on my own terms. That was the vision. But vision doesn't pay the mortgage. And a few months in, the financial pressure started building. I had savings, enough to manage for a while, but fear doesn't care about your bank balance. Fear whispers in your ear constantly. What if the savings run out? What if this doesn't work? What if you made a terrible mistake? And when fear gets loud enough, you start making decisions, not good decisions, not strategic decisions, panic decisions. That's exactly what I did. I started looking for part-time work, something that would bring in some income while I continued building the channel on the side. And I told myself, this is smart, this is responsible, this is what a sensible person does. What I didn't tell myself was the truth, that I was acting out of fear, and fear was driving every single part of that decision. I took a part-time job as a care coordinator. On paper, it looked perfect. Part-time, shift work. I could structure my hours around dropping and picking up my kids 2 days a week. How hard could it be? I want you to understand something. Had spent 15 plus years behind a desk in corporate, meetings, spreadsheets, emails, strategy documents. That was my world. I had never done anything remotely like care work in my entire professional life, but I convinced myself it would be fine. I convinced myself I could handle it, because the alternative, admitting I was scared and sitting with that uncertainty, felt worse than just doing something, anything. So I accepted the job, and within days of starting, I knew I'd made a mistake. The onboarding was overwhelming. Even though I was only part-time, 2 days a week, the e-learning expectations were the same as a full-time member of staff. Get it done. Get it done fast. Nobody cared that I was juggling this with everything else in my life. The training had to be completed, and that was that. So I'm doing online training. I'm doing shift work. I'm trying to be a present mum. I'm trying to keep the channel going. And I'm doing all of this simultaneously with absolutely no breathing room. The shadowing, the period where you're supposed to learn the job properly before doing it alone, was 4 days. 4 days. And then I was just left to it, left to care for vulnerable elderly people on my own, with equipment that half the time wasn't even working properly. I was constantly doing screenshots on my phone just to log my visits because the system kept failing. And every single shift I was terrified. Let me tell you what that terror actually felt like, because I think this is important. I remember sitting at my desk before an evening shift, 4 until 11, and I was physically shaking, not nervous, not anxious, physically shaking. I would check the handover notes, check my service visits for the evening, try to prepare myself, and the whole time my heart was racing because I knew I was going to be alone with people who were vulnerable, people who deserve someone confident, someone experienced, someone who knew what they were doing. And I didn't feel like any of those things. That shaking before every shift, that is not normal tiredness. That is not first job nerves. That is your body sending you a very clear message that something is deeply wrong. And I ignored that message for months. It affected my mental health profoundly. I was anxious all the time, not just during shifts, constantly, always thinking about the next shift, always worried about the people I was caring for, always feeling like I was failing them. It affected me physically. Care work is demanding in a way that a desk job simply is not. I was exhausted in a bone-deep way I'd never experienced before, and it affected my confidence, because here is the cruel irony of taking a job you're not suited for out of desperation. You leave corporate feeling like you know who you are and what you're capable of, and then you struggle in a completely unfamiliar environment, and that voice starts, maybe you can't do this. Maybe you're not as capable as you thought. Leaving corporate was the biggest mistake of your life. That voice is lying. But when you're shaking before every shift and running on empty, it is very, very hard to know that. By February this year, I had reached my limit. I resigned, because resigning felt like another failure. I had already left corporate, and now I was leaving this job too. The narrative in my head was brutal. You can't stick at anything. You keep running away. But that narrative was wrong. Resigning was the right decision. It was the brave decision, because staying in something that is destroying your mental health and your confidence and your energy, just to avoid the discomfort of admitting you made a wrong choice, that is not strength. That is fear in a different costume. And here is the thing that really gets me when I look back on those 3 months. I had savings. enough to have managed without that income while I took more time to figure things out properly. I didn't need that job financially, but fear doesn't care about your bank balance. Fear told me I needed it. Fear was wrong. And that desperate decision, made from panic rather than strategy, cost me 3 months of my well being, 3 months of my energy, and 3 months of this channel going quiet while the people I'm here to serve heard nothing from me. So, what would I do differently? Because that's the whole point of sharing this. Number one, I would have been honest with myself about what I could realistically handle. I was already building a channel, already job hunting, already being a mum, already navigating the emotional complexity of leaving a 15-year career. Adding a physically and emotionally demanding role on top of all of that was never going to work. I knew that somewhere deep down. I just didn't want to hear it. Number two, I would have asked better questions before accepting. What does onboarding really look like? What support is available for part-time staff? What are the realistic expectations in the first 3 months? I accepted too fast because I was desperate. Desperation makes you skip the questions that matter. Number three, I would have given myself permission to say no. No to the wrong opportunity, even when the right one hadn't shown up yet. That is genuinely hard when the mortgage is looming and fear is loud. But the wrong yes almost always costs more than a temporary no. And number four, I would have protected this, the rebuild blueprint, because this channel, this community is the thing I actually care about. And I let fear drag me away from it for 3 months and never again. If you are rebuilding after corporate right now and you are feeling that financial pressure, I see you. I have sat exactly where you are sitting, and I know how loud that fear gets. But I want you to hear this clearly. A desperate decision made from fear will almost always cost you more than the problem you were trying to solve. More time, more energy, more confidence, more months of your rebuild lost to the wrong path. Choose carefully. Choose from your values and your strategy, not your panic. You did not leave corporate after all those years to let fear make your decisions for you. Remember that. This is the rebuild blueprint. Every Wednesday, real talk, real journey, no filters. I will see you next week.